Hello, bonjour, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our cloud lunch and learn session today in the afternoon hours here in East Coast, and it might be a different hour, but I hope you are joining this session today. We are going to have a different session today regarding with the topic Azure Well Architected Framework, and we have our guest speaker Lalit. Hey, welcome to Studio Lalit. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Aglan. How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Lalit is joining from Bangalore, India, and he's a senior solution architect. He's also Microsoft MVP for a couple of years in Microsoft Azure, and he's excited to present this session to us. So he's going to focus on Azure well architected framework, what type of solutions you can assess with that, and how you can get the benefit of it. So without any overdue, back to you, Lalit. If you want,
Thanks,
we can
Aglan.
share I can
Uh,
share the slide, so you can bring your PowerPoint here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, let me know once you put the presentation sharing. I can bring it to the studio.
yeah.
Okay,
Just
I
share.
see it. So I brought it, so try to put your PowerPoint. And meanwhile, for everyone in the studio, I see Wode say hi. Hi, Wode, welcome. And we are just kickstarting our session, and Lalit is going to share his slide deck, and as well as he will be presenting the demo regarding this session on Azure Well Architect Framework. Okay, Lalit, I don't, are you sharing your slide? Okay.
Yeah. Just give
Yeah,
me
now
a
it's
sec. I think I
visible.
have shared my whole
No, no,
screen.
you are already sharing. Just
I can share my.
show it and
Okay.
put on the presentation mode if that's how you would like to do it. Yes, it's
Awesome.
all
Awesome.
here. Yeah, it's all here. So back to you. I'm going to disappear. If there are any questions, I will come back. Thank you. Good luck, Lalit.
Sure. Thanks, Aglan. So, we'll be discussing around well architect framework and why this is important, right? So as and when you are building a solutions, as and when you are designing some solutions, or you get a requirement to migrate the workload from on-premises to Azure, you would need to know what are the policies you have to consider, right? What are the component, what are their best practices are around, and they have around five models in, under the well architect frameworks. We'll discuss around this, let's say optimizations, cost optimizations, operations efficiency, right? Security and many more. So, well, this talk will getting started with my introductions. I'm Lalit Rawat, I'm Microsoft MVP, solution architect. I'm a public speaker. I've been authored with three books. I'm a blogger, motivator, and a cloud evangelist. I have been delivered more than 500 to 600 sessions, technical sessions. We do organize the meetups in Bangalore as well as collaborate around the world. So if you wanted to get an update around those, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever it is possible. You can ping here. Would be happy to assist you around whatever the technology which I have skills to, right? So let's understand what is well architect framework. So well architect frameworks in today's agenda will be discussing around what is well architect frameworks, how you're going to review your cost optimizations, your operation excellency, performance, reliability, and the security, and what kind of the remediations you are going to take, and what would be your expected outcomes around this session. Right? So the first one, when you think to design a software or develop a software versus how you're going to do it in terms of an architecture, right? What could be the two questions comes in your mind, right? So when you design some of the software for development, what do you do generally? You just try and understand what the application should do, right? what is their front end, back end, right? What are the components are there, whether what kind of the code repository they have, what kind of the code they have written, either they have in Java, PHP, and what so not, right? But if you talk about in terms of design, it is more in aligned to how your products looks like. And is similarly to that, like if you are building a house, first you go to the architect and build the map for it, right? So will you build the whole structure on the paper, right? Where your which room should be, how your balcony looks like, how your interior looks like, how your exterior looks like, and all of those things. The same way, when you design a software, right, how your interior looks like, so what's your software looks like, and how it will be connected to the many services. You looked out your operations design, criteria of success, and all of those things. You don't want to do build your house where you don't have any of the roads, right? You have to be more operationalized, right? Because it helps you to commute daily. Right? These are some of the questions comes into the mind. Then why you need in well architect frameworks. Let's say if you don't follow the well architect frameworks, there's two things will happen, right? What are the triggers which will make sure you would using these things? So it has been divided in terms of institution, organizations, professions, teams, individual, and the technical capabilities. If you talk about in terms of institutions, whenever you are going at it migrating, there might be incomplete procedures of this institute. They might don't know how to migrate, they just build up things, right? The second one, in terms of organizations, they might have a regulatory narrowness or mixed messages around what kind of the solutions they have to follow, what kind of the compliances they have to follow, and all of those things. Then we'll have a production pressure and the responsibility shifting. When you comes into the professions, right? Always they wanted to develop everything in a so early as soon as possible. Like they might have given you the project, you have to deliver it in 2 days, 3 days, or 1 week of time. That's how the expectations set by the team, right? Then you have the responsibility shifting and inadequate training. Might be in a team member, they might not know what are the capabilities of Azure, what are the best practices, what are the policies has to follow, right? They might not train on that, right? So all of those things will come into this. Then if you talk about an individual, there might be distractions, attentions distractions might be there, right? Because they might be doing in one project, another project might come up, or they might be having some of those emergencies, and all of those things will come into the picture, and they might not able to concentrate in terms of the deployment without in well architect frameworks they have followed. Then clumsy technology, coding bugs, and the deferred maintenance. These are the things which is technical. If you build some things without following the best practices, without following the rules and the regulations, right? There are a lot of technology. How you can map it with the technologies, right? How your applications will map to your cloud. It is an on-premises. If, whether they have some coding bugs, whether they have differed from the maintenance, because each applications takes their own technology, their bugs, they differ from the one applications to another one, right? PHP might be different from Java, or there may be legacy applications might have the different kind of maintenance than the different kind of applications, right? So all of those bad things can happen when you don't follow an architecture, and then the incidents will come, right? At that time they'll say that why didn't you follow those things. The second one is how you can proven the guidance that your journey should be in terms of whenever you are deciding in from central IT to a workload owner, right? As and when you plan your cloud journey, first of all, you define your strategy, define your business justifications, the expected outcome should be there, right? Then you align to an actionable adoption plan for business outcome, which is nothing but it's your lending zone. First you create a portfolio, then you create a lending zone as also part of plan. Then you choose the cloud platform, right? When you are ready, so you will prepare your people, prepare your processes, environment for change, And once you do this, then only you're going to migrate your resources or create your resources, which is nothing but is workload and assets. Then it's ready to adopt the cloud technology. And then once you adopt it, you would need to manage and govern, right? And that's how the well architect frameworks help you, right? It provides the guidance to design, build, and optimize your workload in Microsoft Azure. Then this is the fundamental of well architect frameworks, right? They have five pillars. One is cost optimizations, operations excellency, performance efficiency, reliability, and security, right? So in this, there is another five upper layer. Cost optimization can be achieved using Azure Advisor. This is one part. Bell Architect frameworks review, which might be fit into one of those areas, maybe operational excellence or performance efficiency. Design principle. If you design principle, it might help in your reliability and security, right? Partners and service offering. What kind of the partners you have? What kind of the services they are giving? Whether you have followed the reference architecture or not, whether you have followed the documentations or not. They have all of those guidance, the set of rules which is there, right? And that's how it is more critical to not to follow uh, well architect frameworks. But if you follow, the 90% of your risk will be mitigate. So what could be the best practices to drive the workload with the quality? The first is cost optimizations. Once you build your resources in Azure or migrate from on-premises to Azure, right? Whether you are monitoring and forecasting your resources, if not, you'll have the cost manager for it, cost analysis. You will go and analysis your cost. How you can control your hybrid cost, right? What are the Azure hybrid benefit where you will save up to 59% or 49% on the licenses, around 20 to 30% or 40% on the hardware cost, right? Whether you are using the reserve instances save a lot of cost. Whether you are resizing your VMs or shutting down your VMs, which is not into the productions, how you can move your applications, which is IaaS to PaaS, right? All of those things. So you looked out the calculator whether IaaS is costing more or the PaaS is costing more, and based on that, you can do that. Then you have operations excellence, which is DevOps, deployment, monitor, process, and cadence, right? So do you have an automations in place, right? You are using DevOps tool for deployment and monitoring and code changes and all of those things. Then you have a performance efficiency, whether your solutions include the scaling or the monitoring performance, whether your applications is highly available or not, reliability, right? Defining the requirement for tests and simulations, right? Which is forced to fail over in terms of, let's say, whether you have configured that backup or DR or disaster recovery, right? How you're going to monitor your resource health in terms of if they got failed, how you are going to recover your applications during the disaster recovery, right? During the disaster, something has happened to data centers or something has happened to your applications, how fast you can recover your application. That's how the reliability is. And the security is important criteria where you have an identity and access management, infra protections, app security, how you're going to encrypt your data, and then service governance, operations security, right? You have HIPAA compliance, Azure policies. Using Azure policies, you can use HIPAA compliance, and all of those things can be implemented. But in the same way, whether you are using MFA, multi-factor authentications, or privileged identity management, and all of those areas are you using or not, right? So all of those things will be there. Then you're doing a business, which means you are making the trade-off, right? So business requirement are influenced with your workload architecture decisions, right? The development workload, then the mission critical workload, and then surgical for securing all the workloads. So when you deploy a workload, right, in the dev environment, you can optimize the cost as much as you can, because you don't need all the resources which can be used in the productions, right? When you deploy and mission critical workload, right, your cost will be increased because they are your business applications, right? Maybe the right business decisions for your expenses and will increase the cost. Then search for the cybersecurity drivers or workload activities, the investment or an organization which you are trying and attempt to protect, right? The data and the assets are more valuable. You wanted to protect. Then that's how you're going to put it across in terms of these three areas. When you building and well architect framework system in a shared responsibilities, right? You would looked out three things, right? One is the platform foundations, right? How you are going to build the Azure platform, right? Landing zone, how your design, how can operate, how can monitor the platform features, right? Operations of Azure capabilities, right? You are enabling the security, reliability, operationability, performance, right? The customer applications, whether you have a client, you have a apps and workload where you can build on Azure. So the scopes or responsibility defined from platform foundations to the features, and on top of that you will be deploying your applications, right? So you'll have to look out and that, and you have to think all of those three areas whenever you are taking the recommendations of well architect framework. Then if you're working and doing an well architect framework workshops, first you do the assessment, which is nothing but it's a discovery phase, right? Once you got the report, you will be going to analyze the workload of your on-premises or what applications you wanted to do it. Then you are going to prioritize your applications, what are the components has to migrate it. Then you deploy, and then last will come as an optimize, which is nothing but is your operation optimized in all of those things. So well architect frameworks workshops will works in this four. Then some of those customer stakeholders who will be a part of those particular workshops, but it depends what kind of the solutions you are going to building up, but as a data migrations and all of those things. And few of the requirement there might all of those stakeholders or one or two can be additionally added. I'll have to have a security solution owner, the solution architect, cloud architect, network architect is important. If you have in data solutions, data architect, then security architect, DevOps and SRE lead, then project manager. But I would say the three architect, like three or four positions are needed in any and every cloud solutions. One is solution architect or a cloud architect, network architect, then we'll have a security architect. The project manager is also be a part of, but it's an optional based on how your project is small, medium, and enterprise, right? What could be the key outcome? So first, you're going to identify the risk in the design and implementation of applications. Then we are going to propose the actionable and prioritize recommendations to address the identified risk, right? I'll have, let's say, P0, P1, or P2, like critical, strongly recommended, and then long term sustainability. You can put it as a recommendation, so you can approach in terms of long term to make sure your operations does not impact. Like you can identify the capture the key findings and associated recommendations and well architect frameworks reports, which we are going to and I'm going to show you in a couple more minutes. And you can provide the guidance and implement the critical solutions. And if you find some of those critical solutions can be implemented in the short terms, use those recommendations and get it implemented. So the first phase is your discovery phase, right? Understand the correct current state, right? Use the well architect frameworks, which is have the online questionnaires to have more insight on the customer cloud maturity. Then you'll have to understand the workload profile, customer facing apps or internal applications, IoT solutions. Then you'll have to review the customer for the applications architecture. I'll have to have an Azure walkthrough, right? So all of those four pillars you have to look out. But first two pillar is really important because that's where you will get your 70 to 80% of the answers Then the third one is really important. Until unless you looked out the whole picture of the applications, you will not make the decisions, right? So this is the well architect frameworks report, right? Once you fill up the questionnaires and all of those things, you can get this kind of report, like how your results being influenced. They have in cost optimizations, operations excellency, performance, reliability, right? And all of those things. And these are the 16 recommendations which they are going to show, right? How you're going to examine your workload under the five pillars, providing the specific guidance, proactively focusing on the pillar where most of the attention is needed. Then how your discovery architecture is designed. Let's say you are going to, you have an applications, right, which is backed by the SQL databases, right? How you can design in that whole applications, right? So first what you do, you have to place the critical role to understand the customer deployment, right? And then you can go and ask the customer and raise questions around the design decisions. What are the design decisions they have, why they have built it like this, and all of those things. And what are the interconnectivity and all of those things. And then you can pinpoint the specific point and address the further down. So if you looked out this architecture, the authentications will happen through Active Directory. Then they'll connect to front door and CDN to connect the app services plan, and the backend is function. In between, they are having the messaging system, which is queue, and that connects to Redis cache, which connects to your SQL database. And when the SQL database is there, and then that will send the data to Cosmos DB, and then they have the DR solutions also in place, right? And all of those things, the SQL DB and Cosmos DB sending the data to Azure Search, right? To, if anyone wants to search anything, that option should also be there, right? So all of those things are there, so you can understand in pretty better. Now, how your discovery walkthrough will have review the current state of the resources, then resource walkthrough through the portal by the customers, then can gather the information and government's resources structure, the usual link of the portal, resources organizations, resource explore, tagging and conversations, right? Then identify the workload profile, key productions workload, overview and key scenarios, how the productions workload are being deployed, operate, measured, or monitored, right? How you're going to uses the available data, which is if CEO wants a dashboard for an existing cost, how you're going to do that. Issues and experience the degradations, right? It is more of if there is any issues around the platform services or application architecture or the processes, will have to identify those gaps. So discovery tool can be Azure Advisor, CEO dashboards, Cloud Docket, or AG Base, or Well Architect tool. But we will be just discussing around the Well Architect tool, not the other one, right? So Azure Advisor will provide you the best practices to set up and optimize your workload. It has a simple steps which set up your quick guidelines and quick links. And it's one place to review your all the recommendations, right? And you can also create or generate an alert based on the recommendations which you have put in. So it helps you in terms of cost, security, performance, high availability, and operations excellency. So Azure Advisors covers all of those five phases. Right? So this is again the five pillar of well architect frameworks, but I will not get into this. But let me just share my screen, and I logged into the portal where you can look down the operations excellency. How does it work? In between, if you guys has any questions, any queries, please put it into the chat, and
Hi, Lalit. There
probably
was one
address.
request, not a question. We had the request in the studio saying that would you be able to share your slides or link anything like that to these slides that you are going through?
I would need to think on that, but probably most probably remove the links and other stuffs, but I can share the content with you in the PDF format, so that should be
Okay,
okay.
yeah. Once you have it, let me know. I'll share back with the
Not with the
VP.
audience, but
Please.
I'll share with you, so you can if you wanted to put.
Okay. All right then. Thank you. Can continue. Thank.
Awesome. Awesome. Advisor. So just search for the advisor here, right? And it comes to an Azure advisor. If you can look down, these are the five pillar which I will be talking. Cost optimizations, cost, security, reliability, operations excellency, and performance. So if you look down, there's two cost and the performance they have green, but if you looked out my score on operations excellency, right, that has been 45%. Same with the reliability and operations excellence, right? So what are the recommendations they are giving in terms of security? You can anyways download this vulnerability in PDF or CSV file. So we looked out, right? I have a guest accounts owner should be removed. What kind of the guest account owners he's talking about? So I have multiple guest account owners, saying just have one or two, or it should be your domain name only. Then if you looked out in terms of defender for storage account, as they have done some of those scans, right? And they will be scanning this data. They are requesting, then you can enable the defend Microsoft Defender for storage to scan the sensitive data. But it is up to us whether we need to implement or not, but it is based on your organization policy, because when you implement it, each and everything has cost. SQL database vulnerability, I should say, a Windows Server communications, EDR configurations, and other stuffs, right? And you would have a restricted network for this. So you can see a lot of recommendations are there, right, in terms of security. If we talk about in terms of reliability, right, so these are the things are there. You can migrate to the D series. Will have an reservation capacity, which I don't have. You can create a service health alert. I haven't created. Upgrade to a newer SKU. It might be that VM is running on the older SKU, right? You can enable the cross region restore for recovery vault, which I hadn't done. You can use the NAT gateway for outbound connectivity, which I haven't done in 5 virtual networks. So if you click here, you will also understand what are the virtual network. These are the virtual networks as the NAT gateway to be configured, right? Then if we talk about an operations excellency, so you have to enable the trusted launch, foundations excellency. But this is again depends on your organization's level, because when you implement the VTM or the trusted launch, right, if you miss the key, it will be a blunder. You will not be able to recover it, right? And if you talk about in performance, we don't have any recommendations here. But if you clicked on the all recommendations, right, it will show you all the recommendations at one shot. And if you wanted to download or create an alert or a recommendation digest, you can do that. I'll have a workspace here, right? If you wanted to run this scripts, right, it will get into this, it will note it, right? And you can see what indicates for your this things, right? So this is the things which is there. And then you can look out your resource overview, security recommendations, and reliability recommendations as well, right? So what are high, and then what are the medium, right? So all of those things are there, but this workbooks is already in preview. But you can, have a try on this. This is the new part which is coming up. I think they are going to integrate and well architect frameworks into the advisory. So if you wanted to select your subscriptions, and then you can put as an well architect frameworks review, and I would say as your assessment, right? And I can click on next and get that created. Right? Once I'll click to create, I think there is already one assessment is there. So it's saying you already had this assessment. I'm not sure if something is good. Okay. So I cannot do it from the guest account or the external account. This is something I have to log in through my domain. So, but you can try that out. This is new options. Then I'll have monitoring and other settings, which is just fine. Right. So these five pillars, which I have shown you, is majorly important in terms of cost optimization. So whenever you are designing your solutions, keep the cost constraint, right, and aim to scale the cost, right. Have this costing factor in your mind, and use the right resources size, optimize and monitor your resources to put the monitoring around it. When you do and design for operations excellency, your how you can automate your operations, your testing, your self deployment, your monitoring. When you talk about in terms of performance efficiency, how you're going to design an application which is highly performable, right? You have the performance and monitoring metrics, the capacity planning. If you are building up an SAP applications, definitely you would need and capacity planning in place, the data driven, whether this performance is causing issue during transferring the data from SQL or the different databases, how it will be, right? The reliability which defines your design for resiliencies, right? Monitoring, BCDR plan and test. If you talk about security, right? It's whether your design is security driven, it has, you know it is following the zero trust model or not, or it can be, having insensitive security. Like if you talk about cloud for defender, then cloud for endpoint, and all of those things are the part of zero trust solutions. Your RBAC rule, your privilege identity management, which we called as a PIM, then your active directory assessments, risk assessments, and all of those things comes into this part. Network is a big player in zero architect frameworks, right? So zero architect framework is something which you cannot trust to anyone. Okay. Then you have an overcoming workload quality inhibitors, right? Where you can have the cost optimizations, operations excellency, performance, right? So no cost or usage for the monitor, unclear and understand, lack of structure billing, management, budget restrictions. So all of those comes when you design the solutions. Then when you design it for operations, there might be rapid issues which has been identified. You don't have any deployment automations. You have an absence of communications mechanism, or unclear expectations, which comes during the pre-sales team or the sales team, what the requirement they have taken to you, and they ask for deliver it, and you cannot deliver blindly, right? There is a lot of things comes, right, and you don't have the visibility of your solutions. Then you'll have a monitoring new services, monitoring the current workload, health issues, right, and designing in terms of scaling. Then you have a guidance for technology and architecture selections. You have resilience features, capabilities for better architecture, or if you don't configure the data backup, best practices. If your data is let's say your applications is goes down, how are you going to recover the data, right? If you're not monitoring your current workload and all of those things, if you don't have any support for disaster recovery, how are you going to recover your all of those things? If you don't have any mechanism control for authentication, anyone can log into your organizations, right? threat detections mechanism. If you don't have this, that people will try and hack your data, and then if you don't encrypt your data disk or data, right, anyone can access those things, right? So all of those things, uh, which those scenarios comes, and if you wanted to overcome and have the quality solutions, you would have to use the best practices of the well architect framework, right? So if we talk about in terms of optimizations, right, you will design your cloud environment so that it can be cost effective, right? For operations and deployment, you have to identify the things which is the resources which is insufficiency and based in the cloud spending. I have seen many times when you migrate and people has migrated, there are hundreds of the disks just lying there, the premium disk. When they delete the resources, they just delete the compute, rest of the resources is still there. They are causing the cost, right? And many other, you're shutting down the VM, you might save your 50 to 60% of the costs, right? Then, if you talk about the level one, you have the cost management, sizing and plan, reservations and license, right? You will start getting the recommendations using Azure Advisor. You can have the cost review for 12 months, then you can review your budget and you can configure the alert. Whenever you are migrating anything, it should have all the SKU, the VMs classes reviewed, and what are the pattern or you wanted to do an auto shutdown for your resources or scaling and spot. That is there. Then you have a reservations and license. What kind of the licenses do you need it? What kind of the depth test or prod you need it? The hybrid benefit and licenses you would require. All of those things comes into this picture. Unused resources, local preferences, architectural changes, right? If you have lot of unused resources, you can get that, shut down those VMs or delete those things. I have seen many of the people as putting the backup for a 2 to 3 years and 4 years, which is not required for their GDPR. We can understand if there's a healthcare or finance customer, but if you don't need it, you would need a 3 months of backup, but there is still a 1 year and 2 years of backup. That was causing you the cost. You can get that deleted, and anyways, you have 3 months of backups there. The cost will also vary in terms of your locations. So you have egress traffic, ingress traffic, and different region has the different cost. Architecture changes, if you do any architecture changes, that will occur in cost. So whenever you are redesigning your applications, make sure you will align with cost optimizations. This is a pillar of well architect frameworks. Then these are the services which comes under the reservations, and there are couple more. I'll have an app services, Cosmos DB, storage accounts, virtual machines, dedicated hosts. In terms of, you talk about data services, Postgres, MySQL, my MariaDB, and all of those things comes in there. Then we talk about in terms of BAF, pillar reliability, right? When you start your business requirement, how critical is your applications? What would happen if the production went down? It is your custom solutions or the solutions that we're providing, the solutions for vendor. What could be your SLA, and does the customer have a risk analysis? These are the important questions you have to ask to the client, right? Because based on that you will define the reliability. Many of time it does not mean that whatever the solutions which you have provided, it is not reliable. Might be your solutions is reliable, but the integrations of your APIs for a specific vendor or the specific client might causing the issues, right? So you should know what has been implemented, what has been integrated, and all of those things comes into the picture when you talk about the reliability. You should have the SLA target in place, right? Cloud provides 99.9%, and if you can look down this picture, it is from 3.6 days down to per year, you would have in 5.26 minute. But if you choose the right solutions, right? If you choose an scalability and all of those things, if you don't have the Azure availability zone option, obviously you are not going to achieve that 99.999%. But you might able to uh, use it for 99.99%, right? But it is based on your solutions, and this availability zone and all of those things cannot be implemented everywhere. So you have to look out what could be your SLA targets, right? Based on that, you can think through it and build your design around it. This is just the calculations of it. If you have an applications which is up in 99.95% and a SQL databases which is 99.99%, right? So the total SLA which you have can calculate, which is 99.94% SLA, right? That's is there. So the same if you have in three applications, right? Web app, SQL databases, and Q, right? And web apps were 99.95, SQL DB 99.99, and Q will be 99.9%. Your SLA comes to 99.95%, right? You'll have to calculate the SLA based on your entire architecture and the entire deployment, right? And that's how it will give you the picture. Then you'll have to do the architecture review, identify the types of architecture you are going to. It is tier one, tier two, or it's a three-tier architecture, or enterprise architecture, and all of those things would be there. Then if that has the single point of failure or backup, it is there. The calculated uh, composite SLA, discuss the redundancies and all of those things. Audit load balancing, stateless versus stateful applications, what kind of the engineering you're going to choose if there is something happen to your applications, how you're going to discuss your applications level resiliencies, how you're going to implement your high availability, and can't be your application support and high availability cost versus latency trade-off, the data residencies and all of those things comes whether you are using availability zone for high availability or skill set, or probably you will be using an availability set or the availability zone, and all of those things comes, or the load balancers, or the any other things which helps you to make sure your applications are live 24 by 7. Then how you can have your BCDR strategy, detections and response time in terms of monitoring the design patterns you have, right? Retry, fallback, timeout, and all of those things will be there, right? So what does this do in terms of performance? The application is slow sometimes, you just said, but what could be the reason that applications been slow, right? Maybe that applications is performing pretty well, but in terms of when you implemented using an architecture, but whether the user internet might not that good, right? Or probably when he is trying through VPN and some things, there might be some issues, but does not mean that applications is slow, or he might not be able to uh, probably using in some other method and trying to access, maybe any other issues, maybe the raw performance issues are there, right? But you have to also calculate it and include the end user. When end user uses your applications, there should be some metrics, right, for user to use their applications. Sometimes the user has their own prospects, not the metrics. So this is well architect frameworks pillar, and this is just a diagram for it. If you talk about in terms of performance, you have the VM, because performance depends on your VM sizings. If you are using an higher size of VM, yes, obviously the performance is better. But if you in dev and test, you might not get that much of performance. How about the disk IOPS throughput? It depends on that. The CPU, the response time, the resource hogging. If you talk about a network, what could be the network bandwidth, what are the latencies and the user distributions, the network path, whether you are using in CDN, comparisons, scaling, what kind of the scaling you have in your solutions. It is vertical or horizontal, it is multi-geo deployment, or scale as an independent unit. Then if you talk about in terms of backing up the services, when applications design, data sharing, right? You talk about the data performance, the slowness of your query, the applications, and read replica. Then you'll have a queuing or async processes, batch processes, right? And if you are, sharing the data, whether you have the partitioning and threading capabilities or not, right? And whether you have the shared nothing architecture and review your data structure, database types, and all of those things can impact. If you talk about in terms of security, right? Security is one of the most important aspect of any architecture in terms of your business context, social context, and the tech context, right? So basically, it helps you to provide the confidentiality, integrity, and the availability to make sure your deliberate attack and abuse of your valuable data and the system will not happen, right? It helps you to secure your complex systems, which depends on the understanding, right? Authentications and other things. So when you talk about NBEF, this is the physical layer of securities, right? If you talk about the physical security, which is nothing but is your data center level, then your policies and access, then you'll have a parameter, network, VM compute, application data. So if you look down, the securities comes from ground zero till the data, right? So you have to implement the policies and procedures in all the places. It's not you just secure your physical security. It does not mean that something will not happen inside your home, right? There is this multiple things, right? So you think through it and you have to secure each corner when you think about a security, right? So the security is a multi-layer approach where you are securing your environment and will increase the security postures of your environment, right? And which is also known as a common, like known as defense in depth, right? And you can break it down into the layers, and you can, if you wanted to create a diagram, you can do that. So BAF layers, it's your identity, RBAC, and encryptions, right? How your applications is authenticating and authorizing for your app resources, right? What are the protocol they are using? The MFA, the managed identity, right? Whether you have role-based access control or each team members has these rules and the responsibilities in place, how you're going to manage the access, whether you're using the custom rollback or not, what are the controls are in place. Do you have an AD syncs when you have connected to your integrated using uh, Active Directory sync from on premises to Azure, that is there or not, whether you are encrypted the data, encrypt, encryption mechanism is in place on the server side, OS, client, and the data, right? All of those things comes into the picture. Your net, whether your network is secure, you can secure a network using your network security groups, Bastion, which is used for remote desktop, to have an end-to-end encryptions. You are using BAF and firewall, the connectivity, how you can, doing the connectivity and public access, key and secret, right? So whether you're using key, secret, or certificate managements, key rotations and life cycles, access policies, or you're using bring your own key, tools and procedure, whether you're using monitoring, auditing, vulnerability detections, SIEM, patch management, endpoint protections, all of those comes as a part of security. These couple of the network part which we are talking about is a vast topic. We cannot cover up all of those things, but you can look out how many tools are there in terms of security, right? Then applications, whether your code scanning and the vulnerability assessment is there, whether you have deployed in OAuth or OpenID, right? Do you have the deployment lifecycle or not? And if you talk about an operations excellencies is about whether you have the full visibility into how your applications is running and ensuring that your applications experience user is really good, right? So you can use an DevOps, continuous integrations mind, monitoring and analytic, operations insight. You can use an automations to reduce the efforts and errors. So what could be, 5 or 6 point which you think, right? Did you deploy your monitoring mechanism using metrics, logs, dashboarding, alert, and resource dependencies? What kind of the resources you had? Did you use the naming conventions? How you use your resource optimizations, the subscriptions? How you going to manage your management group, tenant, then deployment strategy? What kind of the automations workflow you are using? Do you have the rollback processes? Are you using infrastructure code, either Terraform, PowerShell, and other tool or ARM template? Do you have the config management? Then the testings, whether you have done the unit testing, integration testing, code coverage, or the security testings, all of those things comes in there, right? If you process for developing and deploying an applications despite a series of steps that are listed from left to right, your testing should be shifted as much as possible towards the beginning of your processes as and when you started the first phase of application, not at last, right, where you end and you identify some of those bugs are there, right? So have those things in place when you start your work and have your at least a development stage ready to get this implemented to make sure if anything comes up that can be fixed during development and testing phase. Okay, then an operations excellency, BCDR comes into the picture, DR strategy, DR deals. Do you have the DR deals, applications prioritize, and all of those things, right? So if you looked out these pictures, and IT department is saying that I was just wondering, do we have an industry recovery plan? We don't have it, right? So if you don't have it, your applications will not be recover based on your RTO and IPU, right? So that is the one part. Then how you can review the prioritize, right? You can provide the workload owners for the prioritize for next steps, right? What has to be fixed immediately and what could be less urgent. So both the recommendations will have to give it to your owners, and you can have this chart in place, right? Have the urgency and the importance part. What could be the next steps? You organize and analyze the informations, whatever the informations you have been shared, review the data collectors, do the discovery phase, then come up with the outcome, review the design proposal, showing how your system as proven and following and addressing the current requirement. Then in that later you can design a workshops for your discovery phase and design proposal, and that's how you can follow this architecture, right? So first you do the scoping, then initiations, then discovery and insights, then you can do the design, implementations, sprint and sprint 2, right? Impact and success criteria, right? Beyond the prioritization there should be next steps, right? Recommendations which you can provide to the customer is there, right? The disruptions for the productions, right, environment, estimation time to complete the remediations, people and resources in the organization that will need to be involvement, potential risk identified. Final, if you agree on success metrics and indicate before the remediations. And if you do a summary and all of those things, I think we are done here. But let's just look out how this well architect framework framework, right, you can do the assessment for it. So I've just checked on this well architect frameworks, right? At 12, I can click on the assessment tools here. You can start an assessment. This is 60 minutes long, and so these are the basic questions. I can change the name of the well architect frameworks. I can click on start. So what kind of the workload you have? You wanted to do it SAP on Azure, Azure Stack, machine learning, or can we choose the first one? Then what are the pillar you wanted to evaluate? You might not need to evaluate all the pillars, but I would say let's evaluate the cost optimizations. You can see, right, these are the questions are there. So I can click on next, and you can see the ratings. So we can put it for 2, let's say. So I'll go back and then we'll select for 2, and that's how we can differentiate. Then something went wrong. Let me just refresh my page. Okay. Okay. So I would say well architect framework next. Then I would, you know, put it in operation. So you can see like some of those questions we also added. Click on next. Now I can quickly answer for all of those things. I would say this budget workload and transparent, and then we train the personal optimizations of strategy. I'll just select the random one and show you the results. Okay. But whenever you are doing an assessments, right, you'll have to read it carefully and answer it. I don't know what this portal is bit slow. Might take last. I think it is going to take time. Maybe it'll take 10-15 minutes, but we are running overtime, right? And if you want to connect with me, you can, connect on my LinkedIn. I can share my UR code with you. Give me one sec. So I can set up some of those questions there. Go next. I think in between, Neklan, if you have, we have come up with any questions, any queries, we can, uh, take those questions and I can answer it. Till the time I'm just, filling out this assessment.
Hi, Lalit. I don't think you need to fill and finish this assessment. I think you provided good intro, where it is, how it is working,
Yeah.
what are the stages. I don't see any questions on the chat yet, but would you like to conclude your session by providing some information to our viewers where
Awesome.
they can connect with you, or if they have any questions, how they can send it to you?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm just ping you the link in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
They
can
can
put that link in
connect
the
over
chat.
there.
Just put that in the comments in the chat. I'll share it with everyone. Okay.
Uh,
All right. I
I
got
think,
this. I'm going to share the LinkedIn uh, link from
but
Lalit. Okay.
I don't have it. Uh,
So you can get
it is asking me to join pro. Yeah, is it possible for you? I'm still, it's been traveling to.
no, that's fine. Don't worry. I already pasted the link there.
Yep.
Okay. So the
Okay.
users will contact you if they have
Awesome.
any questions on the side. To wrap it up, from your perspective, from your perspective, Lalit, if users want to learn more about Azure Well Architect framework and put that in use and get into action, what are the good resources they can look into? Where do you advise users to look into?
I would say, like, if you wanted to, looked out in terms of well architect frameworks, there
Mm-hmm.
is, you just search for this well architect framework, the link which I have given to you, right? It has all the questions in the query, right? You can do it in terms of Microsoft Learn. You can go to Microsoft Learn and search for well architect framework, right?
Okay.
And that is the best way to learn, because these documents are getting changed now and then, and
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft is coming up with new recommendations, new suggestions, right? And they will be adding keep questionings around it. So I'll be sharing this link. You can put it across into the chat. So that's the best
Okay.
place to do it, and you can, this is the one part of it. Then you can have to identify and understand how you can build your landing zone. That is again depends on your services, whether you are building the data model related services, so you have an AI architecture, or you have an Azure migration architecture. That will be
Mhm.
differ those landing zone, and then based on the organizations you are doing it. So there's a lot of things to learn, but these all of those things comes as a part of well architect framework.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And thank you everyone who joined our session to learn about Azure Well Architecture Framework, how to build solutions and assess your solution against the Azure Well Architected framework pillars that are coming with it. And thank you, Lalit, for your presentation, slide, and demos that you had in this session. Thank you, Lalit. Thank you, everyone. Any last
Yes.
minute, words that you want to say, Lalit, to our Cloud Lunch and
Yeah.
Learn people and viewers?
Yeah, I would like to, thanks Cloud Lunch and Learn, because this is my third or fourth session with them. So Hugo and Eklan and the whole Cloud Lunch and Learn team, I would like to say thanks and appreciate your effort, because you are making an impact to a community and helping others to learn worldwide. And your contributions are valuable, and thank you so much. At last, if you guys has any questions, you can get in connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much available. You can ping me. I would happy to answer all of your queries and questions based on my knowledge. If I don't understand your questions, still I will try find it out and provide you the solutions. So keep in touch, connect with me on LinkedIn, and if you have any queries, you can drop out an email to Cloud Lunch and Learn team. We can connect again. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Lalit, for offering the help to viewers who want to get connect and get more information. Have a great day, and thank you everyone for watching our session. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.